There are an uncountable amount of fictional series that could be turned into an MMO, but One Piece stands at the top of the list as the best series that could be turned into an MMO. If you don't know what an MMO is, here's the definition. There are 7 reasons why One Piece would make it a phenomenal MMO. Reason 1, character. Now this involves leveling your character, creating your character, skills for your character, and as well as artisan classes, which is something I'm going to talk about in a different section of the video. The 2 main things that go into character creation are your race and starting area. Now for the first one, race, One Piece has a ton of different races, but the thing is that most of these races are far and few between, and there's a lot of power differences in that one race is like way more powerful than another. So for the game, it wouldn't make sense to have players choose the races, and instead they would be locked into playing human. For starting area, I think the players would get a chance between one of the blues, and they'd have to move into the Grand Line at their own will. Leveling in most MMOs is either quest based or kill based, or usually like a combination of the two. In One Piece, there's not a lot of like constant killing or like random enemies that you kill. So while kills would give you XP, the main source of XP is going to be through quests and achievements. And achievements are, if you were to somehow become a Yonko, you would get like a boost of XP for doing that would raise your level. Usually in MMOs, as you level, you unlock skills and then you go into some sort of skill tree with that. But in the One Piece MMO, this wouldn't make sense because there would set a clear meta through the skill tree, like go this path to become the most powerful. So what would actually happen is that levels would grant you the opportunity to use more abilities, but like skills would actually be unlocked through finding skills. So this would be like skill books, or maybe you find a poneglyph that teaches you something, or another main way of doing it would be finding a teacher. So this would probably be an NPC teacher, or it could even be another player teacher at some point. How this would work is that the better skill that you can unlock, the more rare that skill is. So this is where it gets interesting, in that there is still a skill tree, but it's more a skill tree that locks out your use of certain abilities. So this locks you into being a swordsman, a sniper, brawler, whatever it is. That's what the skill tree you're following. It more means you can't use a sniper skill if you're a swordsman. This is essential because otherwise you could just stack like powerful skill on powerful skill and be the best, and you wouldn't really have like any sort of class and it'd just be too confusing. Now there is an exception to what I just talked about, and that would be with devil fruits. Devil fruits would have their own skill tree because there's like no shot whatsoever you're going to find a skill book for like a specific devil fruit. Now with the stuff I've talked about with characters, you can see why character creation and just characters in general has an insane opportunity for so many cool abilities and skills. Creating your character, where you start your character. And I think my favorite part about this is that no two people in the entire game would have the same character. Like, they're extremely different every single person you go to. Reason 2, geography. One Piece has an insanely diverse world with so many different beautiful islands, and every single island is unique, and this would carry over into the game. All these different islands you go to, they're all unique environments with very cool, like, interesting places to explore. And part of that is that you'd be able to explore islands that the main series, like the manga or anime, they don't go to. So there's all sorts of opportunities for cool things that we don't see in the anime or manga. And this really adds to the experience of One Piece because you get to explore the world yourself and find things on your own that you found. It's your journey. Overall, the One Piece geography is so interesting that it would make probably the best geography of any MMO ever. Reason 3, factions and crews. There are a ton of different factions in One Piece, from the Navy to pirates, to the world government, to bounty hunters, to the revolutionary army. So first up is pirates. This is what most players would play, I'd assume. You can have a crew with your friends where you're all pirates and you have a crew, one of you is the captain, and you can go on the traditional route that a pirate in the One Piece world would go on. Also, as a pirate, you could work up to different roles and become renowned with different titles, like best swordsman in the world, or a Yonko, or like part of the Yonko crew. There's all these roles that are titles you can achieve that show how powerful of a pirate you are. For the Navy and world government, you could kind of join a crew, and the Navy would be a lot of like NPC run. So you'd be working with a lot of NPCs more than the pirate players would. And you'd be able to work up through all the roles in the Navy. So you could work up to like eventually like admiral if you're insane enough of a player. Or there's also a lot of different routes within like the Navy world government. Like you could go into CP and work your way up to like to CP0 from, or like CP9, whatever. And with the Revolutionary Army, it's kind of similar to Navy, but I think my feel with this would be it's kind of like a mix of the Navy and Pirates in that you have more of a ranking system like the Navy, but you also go into like crew formats where you're going out and accomplishing certain missions as a revolutionary to fight back against the world government. And the last faction I'm mentioning here is the bounty hunters, which would be super interesting. You go hunt down these players and turn them in and get their bounties, and then those players go to like Impel Down and they have to try to break out in some sort of event or something, or there's other things within Impel Down. There's a huge opportunity there for some interesting interactions as a player. And the other thing about being a bounty hunter is that this is more of a solo thing. So I mean, you really could have a crew of bounty hunters, so you can still play with your friends, but this is more of an opportunity for people who are solo players to have a faction that like conforms to what they want to do. So like this game isn't locked into you playing with friends, and your power as a player doesn't depend on your friends. Like if you don't have a ton of friends to play with, sorry, but you can play a bounty hunter, and that's a very good opportunity as a role to play. I really think the coolest thing about the faction piece of One Piece is that you can rank up within your respective faction. So like through like some sort of reputation system, you become more powerful of a pirate, or a more renowned Navy soldier, or revolutionary, right? Or you could be like a super feared bounty hunter where all the players like are like, watch out for this guy. If he's coming for you, like he's getting you, you have to run. I'd assume like 90% of players would be a pirate. So some of these factions would have a like difference in balance. Like especially the Navy is one where you'd think there will be not enough players to accommodate what there would need to be, and this is where like NPCs would fill in the gaps. Every pirate crew isn't going to be just players. A lot of them are, but some of them would be NPCs. And especially in the Navy, like I just said, there'd be a lot of NPCs as different like levels, and you'd have to work through them. Revolutionary Army is the same, and bounty hunters is there would be NPC bounty hunters of different rankings that would go after different levels of pirates. You don't want to limit players to one faction because they might find that boring after a while. So what would happen is that you'd focus on one character to like level them up. So if your goal is to become a Navy admiral, that you just play Navy. So to allow players to play other levels, there would be this system that I call the who you know system. And this is that you're connected to each of your characters. Kind of like how when Luffy was like connected to Garp and Dragon, he instantly became more renowned. Your other characters are all connected as some sort of like family to your other characters. If you built your way up as a pirate and then you start a Navy character, your Navy character wouldn't start at the bottom of the Navy chain. They would go up in the chain because they're instantly said like, oh, you have powerful family members, you're going to be powerful as well. So you have this higher starting area where progress on one character progresses all your characters in some sort of way, at least. In that way, it allows you to play every faction and try every faction to see what you want to do, and you're not left behind and forced to do just one faction. Now, this faction system as a whole is probably one of the most important features of the game that would come out. Another thing you could do is just make the only option to play as a pirate. And because I think the vast majority of players will play as pirate, so you could just say you can only play pirate, you can't play any of these other people, and it would make it easier to like create that game. Reason 4, progressing world story. One Piece is known for its insane story that honestly I consider probably the best piece of fiction, like period, right? And this game is a way to progress the world story after One Piece ends. So this would be a sequel to One Piece. The cool things is that as a player, you get to advance the One Piece world in a way that is like actual canon. Like this game could be like the canon after One Piece ends. This is how the world progresses, is events that take place within this game. So there would be certain events like imagine like a Marineford type of war that would happen, and everyone who's involved, like people who do more work within this war, are renowned in the world story as like as an important person because of their role. And another great way to do this, which would be really interesting, is with like the newspapers, right? That's how you can see what other players have done in the world, or like events that are going to happen, so you can be involved. There's like a tab where you can see the newspaper 24/7, so you don't have to like wait for it to be dropped, and you can see all these lists of events that are happening, like where they are, so you can try to get them if you want to. Or also events that have happened, like not every event is going to be announced, like some of them are spontaneous, so you can see these events. Or like world decisions. So if the Navy makes a decision about something, they're like, hey, we're reinstating the Seven Warlord system, you could see that, and then you can try to become like a warlord or something. It's stuff like that where the story is progressing and you can see it in the newspaper. And also that comes with like bounties. But if a player does something insane, like they break into a government compound and their bounty goes way up, they'll be listed in the paper, and then you'll show that person's like insane new bounty. And not every bounty is going to be listed, right? It's only going to be like the high bounties that players or like NPC pirates are. You'll be able to see them in the paper and be like, oh wow, he must have done something crazy to get that high of a rank up in his bounty. And overall, I think the player's impact on the actual story of One Piece is going to be one of the things that would drive more players than any other feature of this game to this game, because like you love One Piece, you want to have an involvement in the fact that you can have an involvement in the story of One Piece and be like a character in One Piece would be like an insane opportunity. Like I would play this game 24/7 to try to make my impact in the world of my favorite series of all time. Reason 5, loot and player economy. Now, there are a lot of things you can think of when it comes to loot, and I'm going to cover this list from the things you would think of right away to the things you wouldn't really think of. I'm going to start with the obvious thing, one of the most important thing, the currency, berries. You'd have a certain amount of berries, and they would be the world currency. That's obvious, just how to get it out of the way. Next is devil fruits. So finding devil fruits is a big thing. I'm going to talk about later on how devil fruits would work more. Like rare devil fruits, you could sell them to other players, or like the world government, you could say like, hey, I'm going to sell the Navy this devil fruit, and they're going to give me an insane price for it to get it off the streets or off the ocean or whatever you want to call it. Next is swords. So swords are like an insane thing too, just like devil fruits, where swords have like a ranking. So if you were able to find one of the higher ranking swords, that would sell for a ton more than one of the lower ranking swords. But there's a really cool opportunity to find or maybe even make one of these swords and have a like high ranking sword for your character to use or to sell to someone who can use it or has more money to buy that sword. And with swords, there's obviously a ton of other weapons. I just think swords are the main one. Like you can add a whole like system of rarity for guns and spears or whatever. I know blades are kind of like their own thing. That's kind of the swords thing. But you know, like slingshot, whatever, guns, all types of other weapons have their own like economy. Another really cool one actually is boats. So selling, buying boats, and then procuring boats from people who make them. And there's this whole like economy of like you could have a bigger boat or a smaller boat. I just mess up my hands. You have a huge boat or a small boat, and somewhere in between, right? And obviously the money, the berry cost for this is going to be like different based on the bits and bobs, the bells and whistles on your ship. The better ship you have, it's gonna be super expensive, harder to destroy, that type of thing, than a smaller ship that has nothing on it. Another really cool thing is like a home base. Like maybe you have an island that you establish farms on, where you have NPCs farming for you, and it's like your territory. Maybe you could even sell territory to another pirate group. You can have your base that's your home operation where you can store stuff, and maybe other players can attack it. But you can buy like the house or an island. You could even buy NPCs to protect your property. I think there's a ton of stuff that goes into player owned property that would make a really interesting system. A huge one is gear, like the gear, just any gear in general. Like I already talked about like weapons and stuff, but like armor, clothing, that type of stuff would be a huge one where you could get like, you know, like your fashion stuff and good armor to wear. And also, I know I just talked about it a little bit, but like NPCs, there's this whole rarity system of NPCs where you could like hire NPCs to the point where you could have NPCs that are like people, like even they might have been in One Piece. Imagine like extremely rare, someone finds Zoro, and in Zoro's in his 50s or 60s after his whole thing with Luffy, and you're able to pay like an insane price, or not even, it wouldn't even be a berry price. I feel like how you would be able to get like someone as important as someone like Zoro to, and they wouldn't be able to like join your crew or anything with that important of a person, but maybe he like is able to assist you for a certain battle if you complete this insanely difficult quest that he gives you. Go find me this bottle of booze that's like the only bottle of its type, and you have to go to this insane ruin to find this one thing, and then you get him and he helps you in a battle that allows you to get other stuff, and that's it, right? So I think there would be cool opportunities for NPCs from One Piece. And you know, there's a ton of like lower people in One Piece. The one I'm thinking of right now is like that sheep guy in Syrup Town that like makes the going merry for them. Like maybe you could find him and get him to make you like a lower level ship earlier on, or like buy him as a shipwright for your crew. An interesting one I was thinking of too is commodities. So Like one island is like a winter island, so it's harder for them to produce food. You could go to another island that produces like an excess of food, buy food for cheap, transport it to that island that is in need of food or its people are like starving or whatever, and say, I'm gonna sell this food to you for a high price because you need it more. And there's all sorts of commodities. Like maybe one island, it can't grow trees, so they need wood. So you go to another island that is just like a forest island where it's just constant like wood everywhere, and you buy their wood for cheap and bring it to this island and sell it for more. There's a lot of opportunity there for stuff like a sickness breaks out and they need a special type of medicine. So you have to go get medicine for them. And the quality of medicine you get is like the better medicine, the more they pay you, that type of thing. So I think there's a lot of cool things you can do there where like shipping different commodities from island to island. Maybe the Navy needs like a specific thing. So you do like a Navy quest where you get them stuff and then you get reputation with the Navy that you help them, so they're more helpful towards you. Another one is information and lore. Information is a huge one, right? Like you can say, we found a dungeon here, which would be like probably like a ruin or something, or some ancient thing or something that you go to and you can find loot there. Like imagine you find an NPC in like this back alley town and he's like, hey, I'll sell you information on where a very powerful relic is located, and then you have to pay him for this information, or maybe you pay other players for information on where to find certain like materials or resources or something. A lot of stuff that could happen with that. Also, there's skill based commodities, so like the selling of skill books, that's like obviously a massive one with how the skill system would work. Being able to sell books or buy them from other players as well, that's a huge commodity. Through all these things, it's easy to see how the players drive the economy. What the players do, what is in need, it's all driven by the players, what they're gathering, what they're selling, that type of stuff. As a player, you have an impact in the economy of the world, and that's a very cool feature. Reason 6, Artisan Classes. I talked about this in the character section. I'm finally getting back to it. Here it is. Artisan Classes would be cooking, logging, mining, weapon making, armor making, fishing, ship making, archaeology, navigating, pickpocketing. You get the idea. There's a lot. Now, Artisan Classes would be similar to the main skills in that you can find certain skill books for them, but the difference is that these are more skill tree based, where grinding them out and getting more experience in them for your character allows you to become better at them and grow through like a skill tree, where like the base actual skills that aren't artisan skills like aren't. Like you have to find skills for those. This one is the opposite. It's more like finding skills is more rare for certain like subsections of your artisan class. If you're like a cook, you just make a crap ton of food and you keep making food and you get better at it and you're allowed to like make better food. Basically the typical MMO artisan class way. And another section of this is that you can't do everything. Like you can't be a professional cook and be a professional navigator. At some point, if you progress past a certain point in one, you're locked out of other ones. So not to say you couldn't do any of the other ones at all. It's just you can't be a top tier professional. So this stops players from being able to do everything by themselves, and they rely on other players for certain things. And this drives player interaction, which is one of the key components of MMOs. And most of the great MMOs are run by player interaction because that's what people like to do. Now, I'm sure you'd be worried about what if no one wants to be a navigator, so there's no navigators. Well, this is where, I mean, the basic components of supply and demand come in. So if no one is doing something, players are going to need that more than anything else. So if no one wants to be a chef, then more players are going to become chefs just because all the money they can make from people going to them for their products that no one else is making. So that's how they kind of balance out the artisan classes. And yeah, just like all the other player character based things, there's a ton of opportunity here for a lot of interesting game components. Reason 7, the final reason. Exclusivity. Exclusivity is one of the most important parts of an MMO to make an MMO great. And this is something I talked about throughout the video. I just haven't specifically mentioned it. No two characters can become the best swordsman in the world, right? There's no two players that can do that. There's this exclusivity of you're grinding to something that no one else can have. If you have the sword Edma, no one else can have it. You have it. And that is something players are going to grind to achieve. They want to achieve a goal. So if you want to become a Yonko, well, only 4 players can become a Yonko, right? And, you know, there's probably a whole reputation system based around that. But this thing of exclusivity of like devil fruits is probably one of the biggest examples of exclusivity in this, is that one person can have that devil fruit. It drives the importance of finding a devil fruit. Like you find a devil fruit, that is a big deal. You're making bank off that if you don't want to use it yourself. And if you do use it yourself, like, that's great. You just have something now that makes you stand out from other players. When I play an MMO, the main thing I want to do is stand out. I think it'd be really cool if you're in the world and someone recognizes you because of some special thing you have. They're like, holy crap, that guy's the best swordsman in the world. Or holy crap, that guy's a Yonko. Like, I gotta stay away from him. Or that guy has that sword. That's insane. I've heard about that sword. He's like the only one who has that tier of sword yet because it's early in the game, whatever. All these unique opportunities for exclusivity that makes players feel important, and they want to feel important. So they're going to grind for these things that make them exclusive. And that's why exclusivity is one of the most important features in this game. Also exclusivity with skills. So like there's this skill that no one else has. Like they find that rare of a book. Like that's a cool thing you can think about. But overall, exclusivity is one of the most important things to do right, because if done right, it encourages the players to achieve something that is no one else has done. Now, there's a couple things I didn't mention that I want to talk about now. One of those things I said earlier in the video, I'd talk about devil fruits more. This is that. You're probably wondering, you're probably thinking about at this point, how are devil fruits going to work? Because if one person has them, if they die once, do they lose their devil fruit? Well, yeah, that wouldn't really make a ton of sense, right? You build up the skill tree, whatever. You don't want to lose it after dying once, but you also don't want players to have it forever, because once all the devil fruits are found way down the line, that'd probably be difficult. But once they're all found, then no one can get one ever again. So there has to be some system in which a player can lose their devil fruit. So the idea for how to do this is that there's a bar towards losing your fruit. Now, the way the bar fills is from a player dying or being inactive. You don't want a player like to log off that has a devil fruit and never get back on, and then that fruit never goes into circulation again. Never goes into circulation again. I just broke something. I just broke the Statue of Liberty Lego statue in my room. Ignore that. Oh, frick! Oh! Okay, I'm okay. I'm okay. Oh my gosh, I'm clumsy. Holy crap. Okay. Anyways, yeah, you don't want a player to have a double fruit, like if they're inactive and just log off and never have it. So, let's say this bar fills up from you dying like too many times or being inactive for too long. How does it just instantly disappear once you fill the bar? No. What would happen is on your next death. So this would be like the canon thing, like you die and it goes. On your next death, you lose that fruit and it would go into the world, into a random place, or if you're inactive for a certain amount of time. So like your bar fills from you being inactive, and then you're inactive for another 3 days or something like that, and then the fruit goes back into the world at that point. So, this way, I think there's a reasonable way if you balance it right, where the fruit stays in circulation, but also a player can have it for a long enough time to like get use out of it. And I bet you're wondering, can the bar go down? Like it goes up, can it go down? It wouldn't, like, there's no decay over time. Like it's not you play and it goes down. But I was thinking there could be like some sort of special quest that you complete the quest and the bar goes down a little bit. But the thing is it would be an insanely difficult quest. So skill would come into play here. The quest, if you mess it up enough, or if you do bad enough where you're dying in it and everything, bar might go up more by the end of the quest than it would go down. So you have to be skilled, where if you're skilled enough, you could keep your devil fruit forever. But, like hypothetically, but you have to be that powerful. Like players could target you out in order to get your devil fruit back into the world. But if you're strong enough, they can't defeat you. That type of thing, where I think that would make devil fruits balanced to some extent. The second thing I want to talk about here is the Pirate King. You might notice I didn't mention this in any of my titles when I talk about like the Yonko or Navy ranks, anything. I didn't mention Pirate King. And the reason for that is because it's like the most special rank in One Piece. It sits above all the ranks. How would you do it? Would you even do it? Would you have the opportunity for someone to become the Pirate King? That's where I think you could have like a hidden path that's insanely difficult. There's no clear path. There's no way the game is telling you how to do it. You have to kind of stumble upon it, right? Like finding like a road poneglyph, and then you have to find all 4 of them, right? The same path in the world. You have to do this hidden path to be able to do that. It's an insanely difficult quest where other people don't want you to become Pirate King, so they're going to actively try to stop you from being the Pirate King. This is like the same thing Luffy has to do in the series. He's fighting other people to become Pirate King. If they don't want him to be Pirate King, they're fighting against him and he's fighting them. It's this constant struggle between the Yonko to attempt to achieve this. That would be an interesting aspect in the game, where it's so difficult. It might take like 5 years after this MMO comes out for someone to be able to become the Pirate King because of how difficult a feat that really is. And I mean, honestly, at that point, I think this would be cool. The One Piece at that point would be basically a myth, just like it is in like the actual series. People don't know if it's real or not at that point, and that would be like a really cool thing in the game to like discuss. Can we actually get the One Piece? Like, can we actually become Pirate King? No one knows until it's been done. So now that I've talked about the 7 reasons for why One Piece would make a great MMO, I think it's undisputable that One Piece would make one of the greatest MMOs of all time. But for the sad part, it's not going to happen. Uh, the game, first of all, I don't think I've ever seen a good game that's made off of an anime. Not to say there's not good anime games, but just any game that's made off of anime tends to be bad. And especially for this game, there's so much stuff going into it that it would have to be picked up by an insanely large studio. And there's more aspects that I've mentioned to this possible game than any other MMO I can think of. The ability to even create this game would take an insane amount of money, an insane amount of manpower, and I don't think they could even get the rights for like a studio to be able to do that. And if they mess it up, and there's so many ways they could mess it up where no one would play the game, it could be just terrible. Like no one would play it. So I don't think they're even willing to risk it. I don't think this is something that will ever happen. And you know, all I can do is hope. Hope that maybe like a couple decades from now, game making has progressed to the point where One Piece can be finally made into the perfect MMO it seems it was destined to be made into. Now, just like me hitting my elbow on the desk, hit that subscribe button. All right, I post a ton of anime content. You're gonna love it. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you in advance. Leave a like on the video. Comment what you think. What do you think about the MMO that I've created in this video? Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Stay slippery. Butter out.